Okay. So, are you ready? Because we are live here on YouTube. Are you ready for me to start the recorder?
Hold on.
Yes?
I gotta. Yeah, yes, but I gotta. Okay.
All right. Okay.
There we go.
Ready?
Now I'm ready.
Now you're ready. Okay, good. Good. Excellent. So 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back, everyone, to Aaron's Opinion, podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Tonight, Darnell Johnson from Radio Connection Live is joining us today in the studio to talk, about himself, Darnell Johnson, and also about Radio Connection Live. You can basically dive into this interview in any direction you want, but for a bit, why don't you talk about who you are for a few moments, and then you can get into Radio Connection Live and talk about the history of the organization and exactly what it does. So go ahead. Your hour starts now.
All right. So my name is Darnell. I am blind. I'm totally blind. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's the world. But I also do listen to music. I play music too. I also have written some songs. You can check YouTube for that info as well on the songs and the info that I've done. Basically, I did. I'm actually taking music lessons at the moment and doing piano stuff. I'm doing private lessons and they're working out fine. So I hope that I will continue to improve those skills as well. I do watch some TV. There are some shows I like, mostly game shows, but I have watched other music shows as well. Music shows such as American Idol and many other things. So that is my main stick on me. To talk about Radio Connection Live now, Radio Connection Live actually started in 2012, July 11th of 2012, on a little phone system known as my Telespace. Well, we weren't grabbing that many listeners on the phone to that show, but then after that, we kind of just bounced around not bounced around yet, because we did get on a few radio stations, one of which that was actually ran by another blind person too. So that was awesome. He wanted to get us a start on the internet radio airwaves. But then we kind of bounced around from station to station, as that was no fault of our own because of the lack of resources and production. And now that was there, we ended up on a few stations. We was on one ran by Willowette, which is WDJM3, which is no longer in existence, and but he will be missed too because he ran that station. But that was a good station. Then we ended up on Panoramic Radio, which was an interesting station too. But even that didn't last very long. The station that we were on first was Audio Access FM, but again, that just didn't last very long. We were on a radio station ran by Jonathan Candler, known as KJSC Radio. That was fun for a while too, and we were on for a few years. But then things happened, and then we ended up within this, we tried to be on another station. It was an internet version of 98 KDLA, and that just didn't last. So we remained on KJSC for a while, and then after that, KJSC disbanded, and then we ended up on 98.6 The Mix, which was one of the coolest stations. It was owned by Herbie out of Houston.
Herbie Allen.
Herbie Allen. Yes.
He's been on my show before. So at one point, now I don't know if he still plays it, and he's welcome to either play my show or not. But I do know that at one point, Aaron's Opinion was or is or continues to be on 98.6 The Mix KKMX. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So we were on that. We were on there, and then it was decided that, Jamie, because Jamie was the co-host along with me. I'm the co-host. Jamie was the main host,
right.
And it was decided that he do a music show, and thus we launched Throwback Saturday Nights, and apparently that show's doing well without the two of us, and I plan not to go back there. But it's a great show. If you guys want to check it out, if you're listeners of 98.6 The Mix, it's a great show. But then after that, Jamie was invited to a friend of his. He has a friend that hosted a podcast as well, and he was invited there, and a light bulb went off in his head, and he said, podcast. So we decided to launch the show and bring it back as a podcast. And it's going well, and it's going successfully well, because now we are actually syndicated on 2 affiliates. So the RCL Radio Network was born within the KJC radio days, but we brought it back because we are now syndicated on more than 3 affiliates now. So yeah,
that's really good.
Stations.
That's really excellent. So what are those stations that the RCL podcast is on right now? What are they? So
these stations are Z103.com, ran by Monty, the Music Man Seaburns, whose interview I think is up right now on the podcast, and Hit Mix, what was it? Super Hit Mix Radio, which
Donald
is
Brown.
Yes,
Absolutely. Great friend of mine, sure.
Yeah, hit-mixradio.com, I think is the site. And then, of course, we're going to be promoting her as well, KrazeyStacey25 Radio. So yes.
Of course.
So yes, so there are the 3 affiliates we are on at this moment. We are looking to grab more. We're slated to get Michael Kendall Harris's Oldies Funhouse Radio on board, but we don't know how that's going to work yet. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good, man. That's really good. It sounds like you've been doing a lot in the internet radio space, which is similar to podcasting and very different from podcasting. It's a very unique niche for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
You were talking about how when you started out in 2012, you were on some telecall rate. I haven't really heard of that. Let's go back and break down the ingredients. What was that thing? Tele something call?
Yeah. If you want to call it, it was a phone. It was a phone-based system known as My Telespace.
Sure. My apologies.
Yeah.
My Telespace, is that what it's called?
That's what it's called. Yeah, My Telespace, ran by Gorton. Don't know his last name, and I prefer you probably wouldn't, because that system was not even the best. So yeah, So but it was ran by Gorton out of I think his Dallas, and but the whole system was, I don't know, because I don't know, it was fun being on there for a while, but then yeah, it wasn't all that great, because then I was on it myself, and I hated that people were just bashing people. It was just drama all over the system. So I left that system. And but yeah, that was where we started on My Telespace, but we weren't getting the attraction that we are now.
Right. So if it was called My Telespace, then does that mean it was like a phone system, like Zoom over the phone, that people would just call into, dial up and dial in and listen, or like how would it have attracted a listener?
Okay, so My Telespace is a phone chat system, and there is a thing on that system called shows, but you have to like you record a message, and everybody has different mailboxes on that system, and that will be considered your show. We did this on a few boxes, and they had there were some things on the system called trees where you can have a menu of different things, and I think Jamie's box was a tree, and I don't remember what option we had for Radio Connection Live, but it was fun for a while. It's a basic chat system, but you have to do like recordings. It wasn't live.
So basically, you could upload an episode to that system, and then people could download it and listen.
Basically, what we recorded was on the phone. It was basically on the phone. We recorded it, and when you sent that message out, it actually was directly on the system. It wasn't a direct upload. It was actually just recorded.
Interesting. So it was just a recording that the public could listen to.
Yes, basically that's what it was.
So basically a podcast that you had to dial into to get it, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, it's nothing personal about you, Darnell, or anything, but I can see where that wouldn't. I can see where that concept wouldn't last, because it's kind of too much trouble to listen to something if you have to dial into it, and then you can't really be doing anything else. That seems kind of silly now. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, who's gonna have a whole hour to hold the phone to their ears or listen on speakerphone? Because that's basically what it was. This was going to be an hour. So yeah, that wasn't what we wanted. And by the way, if anybody was to call into that, we didn't get the attraction. It wasn't even number one. There were other shows that were beating us up on the system. So yeah.
I see. I guess if you got popular enough with enough people dialing into it, then I guess it would work. But
yeah,
that strikes me as something that would lose.
The leader show, by the way, like I said, his name was Gordon. He was always the number one show every single day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot of people called into it. We weren't the ones to do that. Yeah, we were just beating up it, so it just wasn't lasting at all.
I see. Yeah. And then talk more in depth about some of these other stations and other things that you have tried before you developed your whole concept of Radio Connection Live. And by the way, what is the concept or the mission of Radio Connection Live?
The mission is to, explore the industry and tell the news stories and the goings on of the industry. Like, for example, we had a topic about what was known as radio in a box, meaning that if we was to get an iHeart radio station, and these are companies, big companies, iHeart Radio and Clear Channel and all that. Well, they were Clear Channel, now it's iHeart Media. But if we get a company like iHeart Media, iHeart Radio to go into a whole network of things, it would be low. They would say, like, this is the iHeart Country Network, and then your station's branding, like 99.5 GAR, which is our country station. Excuse me. So the basic mission is the radio industry as a whole is changing, and we want to bring you those changes as they happen, especially format changes. Like Tampa just had one a few weeks ago. They have an R&B station in the market now. So we're doing these things as it happens, and we bring you the news stories of the industry provided by Radio Insights and now InsightRadio.com. We used to bring it from AllAccess.com, but now that is now shut down. So yes, that's basically our.
That's really cool, man. I really, really appreciate you for doing all this, because basically you're introducing the public to the beauty and concept of online radio today. You basically it's a online network where you've put together all these stations and all these networks that play content to give people information about the radio industry and what's going on around the world, right? That's what it kind of reminds me of, basically.
Yes, basically, yeah, we do cover most of the world. We mainly cover the US and Canada. We have explored other parts of the world. We have air checked a radio station. Radio air check is basically a recorded radio station and what it sounds like currently. So we did a radio station as Class 95, 95.0. Yeah, an even number frequency. We have 0.1, 0.5, but they have 0.2 in Singapore, and that it was 95.0 with the AC station in Singapore, and great little station. By the way, a day ahead of us, if those guys listen. But yeah, the great station. We do run a lot of what is known as radio air checks. What radio stations sound like currently.
Right. So in other words, you'll give us some station around the world a little sound bite to promote what they do, right?
Right. Yeah, usually 15 to 20 minutes of each. So that's how that goes.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah. Have you now? Are you a member of VisionCast? Have you always been included on VisionCast?
No, I was actually wanting to come on to VisionCast and do a security because of a hack that I recently had on my old fake account, but just didn't come to fruition with my busy schedule and the few internet speeds. So, yes.
Right. I understand. I understand. Yeah. Well, have you, when you guys reach out, when you're on your page, on the Radio Connection Live page, and you decide to reach out to stations, would you like any, would you like me to give you some suggestions now on who you might want to connect with?
That would be cool. You can.
Okay. Two people that really stand out to me, and after this interview, a little later, you'll be added to my private group on WhatsApp. Also, hopefully, you're in my Facebook group for Aaron's Opinion Podcasting Community.
Yeah, I'm in that, and as of the moment, just letting you know, don't have a phone at the moment, so WhatsApp is not an option. But I am in the group. I am in the Facebook group.
Excellent. Well, by the way, you can use WhatsApp on the online client too. You don't even need a phone. You can just do it with an email address and just be on the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry.
Yeah. You definitely do not need a phone or a phone number to be on WhatsApp. You can just do it with a handle that you create and just be on it with your email address.
Oh, okay. That works out perfect.
Yeah, maybe would you like more information about that? By the way, I'd be happy to give you more info about how that would actually work. Most, it's totally fine that you didn't know that. Most people don't know that actually. Most people have been misled to think that you always have to give a phone number to be on WhatsApp. So, but you don't. But yeah, do you want more info about that? By the way.
Yeah, you can private me that information.
All right, cool. No, that's fine. It's important for me not to overwhelm guests with too much knowledge and just too much. It's important for me to balance it out what I send and don't send. But
no problem.
Sure, Darnell. I think you should connect with two great friends of mine in the community who have radio stations. Actually, I have 3 of them for you. You should connect with UVC Radio.
Okay.
Matter of fact, let me just hold on a second. I actually want to write them down for you, just so that when you're watching this, you can go back and see the chat, because this is where first one you should go to is UVC Radio. Okay. Next one you should research is AI Radio. And then the last one is going to be Knowledge. Yeah. Okay. So right there. So we have it here on in the panel if you want to go back to it. You have UVC Radio, KI Radio, and Zollyhood Radio. Now, three very different stations that are all online that do very different things. UVC Radio, okay, tagline for them is the sound that binds us together. UVC Radio, based out of New York, they're an online station that basically does, it stands for United Vision Connect. So United Vision Connect is a global organization that helps people with disabilities and blind people access services and get into the media and radio space, whether it's online or creating shows or doing very similar work to what you guys are doing with Radio Connection Live. Okay, very similar one. So again, you should reach out to these things. And once you're in my WhatsApp group, I will specifically show you and tell you exactly who the people are. Personality.
Okay.
We also have KI Radio, as in Kadeem Irish, another friend of mine in my WhatsApp group. He has an online station where, again, similarly to what you do, he plays music, and it's a variety station. So that would be a good one for you to look into. And then we have Zollyhood Radio out of South Africa by my friend Latabo. And Latabo is not the owner, but he's one of the influential broadcasters on that station. So I think a great project for you that would help, because one thing that I'm determined to do this here as a talk show host, at Aaron's Opinion, I'm determined to be helpful and to provide you with knowledge that is actually useful. And I think if you contact those three stations and say, hey, here's what we do in the industry. We want to work with you guys. We want to share info. We want to connect. I'm sure that they would want to connect to your organization and help you guys to move up. And that's what I would want to do, Darnell. There would be no greater compliment to Aaron's Opinion for me to see that you outdid me, that you performed better than me. That would be a great accomplishment for me in the industry. So that's something that I think you guys should do. And yet you just have to keep reaching out. Personally, I think that the internet radio niche is very difficult to get into and very difficult to, really maintain an audience. It's hard because most people are just listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and so it's very hard for people to understand what internet radio is.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think about all of that, by the way?
Yeah, it looks good. I will actually talk to my three colleagues. One, I'm actually probably going to have to end up talking to him on maybe Sunday. Like I said, that's Jamie, because he's the one that started all this. And the reason why I have to talk to him on Sunday is because he's got gigs himself. Actually, he's got concerts that he's doing himself. So I will talk to him, but I will also talk to the rest of my colleagues and see what they think about this as well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be good, especially if you can make the two main connections with the international stations. UVC United, it's a UVC Radio, it's a global station. So in other words, if you get recognition, or if you get your RCL podcast to be mentioned on that international system, then that would be a great way for you guys to, gain the recognition and move up and be able to influence more of the world. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I will talk to my people about that. In fact, I'm going to be in our hangout group at around probably 10 p.m. and we'll make some talks with that. So yeah.
Well, very good. Very good. And once you join my WhatsApp, it will be easy for me to direct you to who you should be speaking with. Certainly, I can give you Facebook pages, but as you know, the reality is you need to know people at the stations, and I know the people. So, that's another problem that's another challenge with getting into internet radio, is that it requires knowing the people that actually own the station. Whereas YouTube and podcasts, it's a lot of self-made stuff. You don't need to know anyone. That's the main difference.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you mentioned now that that RCL Radio Connection Live is on like these different internet stations today. So what can you tell me about the three main stations that Radio Connection Live is on now?
I can tell you about two of them because I have not yet, or I can only tell you about one because I have not yet listened to the other two. But Z103.com, they play over 7 decades of music. So about the 50s, maybe the 40s. I have heard some 40s there to current. So yeah, it is ran by Monty Seaburns out of Huntington, Indiana. In fact, he's treating the internet station as a local because he also wants to sell advertising too on that internet station, and so it makes a whole lot of sense to do that. And so he's promoting it as a local. Yes, it is a webcast, but it's also put it as a local station. So we recently did an interview on him, and like I said, that interview is up on our podcast page now, and it's good. It's actually a really good station to listen to if you guys check it out. Z103.com. They have a sister station, Z103.us. That is known as Z Country. So really the main Z103.com is over 7 decades of music. So it's mainly a variety station playing everything up from the 40s, maybe even the 30s to current.
Well, that's really good. That's really good. And this Z103.com thing. Now, do you know if they, play podcasts and things like that? What has their interest been in playing other content in addition to music?
Well, believe it or not, he wanted this. Monty actually wanted our show when I told him about it. And so it took us a while to get there. I actually had to haggle my friend Jamie to get everything right because he's been so busy. But we finally got it there, and we aired our first episode. I didn't have an internet connection to listen, but we aired it on October 1st. So, yes.
Good. And how do you suppose they're putting the episodes on their station? What method do they use to put the information into their software?
Okay, so currently there is a Dropbox folder created for Monty and the other guys to access that, and we have to let him know because the Dropbox app doesn't send out notifications for strange reason. But
that sounds you see what I was telling you. It's really hard to get into radio, especially when the app that you use to use it doesn't actually send the notification. That is immensely helpful. Well, what could possibly go wrong?
So they have to test everything is up so that they can upload it into the automation system, which is Station Playlist. He uses Station Playlist, and so they can get that squared away with the clock that they use. So yes.
Well, that's very interesting. Do you suppose they would have let's say that they wanted to download a podcast, would they have the ability to download a podcast from their end and then decide to play it in their system, do you think?
They could, but because we get the files directly from our audio professor, he does some production too, along with Stacey. Our other audio production guy, his name is Tim O'Connor. He has done some production work too. He's had 30 years in the radio industry, and his production skills are also great. He's blind as well. So yeah.
Well, that's these sound like both two very interesting people. That maybe off air we can talk about maybe seeing if I could be put in touch with these guys. They sound very interesting and they sound really engaging and really, that would be really cool. I love geeking out about this and talking about this. So that would be really cool to talk to them. Maybe, right?
Yeah, Jamie and the crew, we're the crew. I'm part of it. So basically the consistency goes like this. Jamie is the host. I'm a co-host, Preston, out of PA,
Mhm.
mainly the Maryland PA border, the York Leicester Harrisburg market is the radio market there. He is in Pennsylvania, and Tim. Okay, so we have our Florida people, Jamie, Tim O'Connor, and AJ. Don't know his last name, but AJ is our news director. He is in Daytona, Florida. So the rest of us are in the other parts of the East Coast. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and Preston is out of Stewartstown, Pennsylvania, which again is that Maryland, PA border. So yes.
Very interesting. Extremely, extremely interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's all really good.
Yeah, it's and
Hmm.
like I said, our shows are fun, jam packed, 2 hours worth of worth of excitement. When we started out our podcast, we have gone over 3 hours, but now we got to try to condense that to 2 hours, and maybe try to minimize how many minutes we talk about topics or whatever, and sometimes we do edit that down. But it is good. It's a fun show. It really is a fun show. Generations of radio listeners can listen to this show. It doesn't matter if it's current. We mainly, at first, we actually focused on currents, and we didn't really do air checks. But when Tim came around, air checks been the norm now. So it's because
Cool.
actually, after this, he was actually the host of Radio Connection Live. We did make him a host on the KJSC days for a while. So yeah.
Well, that's all very, very interesting. Yeah, yeah. So, and what types of things do you do when you're not doing all this Radio Connection Live stuff?
So as I mentioned before, I do music lessons. I can play my keyboard. Currently, it isn't working at the moment. You may have heard it a little bit on a recording when I sent you a private message. But basically, that's how that goes. I do play my keyboard. I do a lot of other cool things. Like I said, I have music lessons, and I do watch a little TV. So I have went to the site center before, but they recently had budget cuts, and so I don't do that anymore. And because the recreation has been moved to Tuesdays only. They're cramming every recreational event into a Tuesday, and no one wants to come into the site center for that. No.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Hmm. Very, very good. Very, very interesting. Yeah. All right. All right. And then outside of all that, what are some other things that you're doing right now? Are you, are you working at the moment, in school in the moment? Like how do you spend your time when you're not doing all of these things?
So I'm not employed, uh, and there is a reason behind this. I am independent, but I don't think I learned enough stuff. But back to Z103.com, I'm actually going to be doing voice tracks for a radio show, and they play hip hop and R&B on that show. As I said, Z103 is a variety station, so they do some hip hop, some R&B, but the show I'm going to be doing is Monday Night Jams, where they play the hottest hip in R&B. And maybe a throwbacks too, but so that's currently what I'm doing. I'm still trying to think of what to say for Z103.com on those voice tracks. But really, outside of all that, I don't do any kind of work at all.
All right. All right. Well, as you move up in internet radio, eventually those projects will make money, right? So that'll be good. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. We are looking to monetize our podcast so that, and since Jamie was the one that started everything, it would go more into his bank account so that, we can get everything. I keep saying this, that Radio Connection Live actually needs jingles. We actually do need jingles because we've been using that one jingle coming into the song of the week for a while, and we need new jingles. So, yeah.
Right, right. Well, that's very good. There's a lot of places that you can get jingles from, and there's a lot of people that you can ask to record, to record jingles. So yeah, yeah. So, and as far as your website for Radio Connection Live, does Radio Connection Live have like a website where people can just listen live, or like how is it set up there?
So no website, but if anybody has any questions or concerns, or if they have any air checks of things in their radio market that they would like to know, they can email our team at RCL the podcast. That's RCL the podcast at gmail.com. Once again, RCL the podcast at gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Good. That's all really good. Excellent. So, where have you traveled to, perhaps around the United States or outside of the United States?
Okay, so in the United States, I've only been to a few places. I've been to Baltimore, Maryland, and the reason behind that was because the NFL Cleveland after we had like we took a trip down to the Jernigan Institute and spent the night and visited some stuff, went to a few meetings. We've actually attended the Maryland NFB meeting one time. So yeah, so that was fun. Staying the night at the Jernigan Institute, that was actually kind of fun. So we've seen the way the Baltimore radio landscape was there. And then I moved from Cleveland in 2015 to Princeton, West Virginia, where that radio market actually sucked. It really did. There were stations I liked, but the whole market, the market sucked as a whole because it was nothing but country. And I like country music, but I just don't listen to it all like that. But I did find a few stations, Star 95, which we did do an air check on them, and now they don't stream anymore. And then there's J104.5, which is now J104, and I think they were J104. I think they said that branding 104 in the past, along with 103 CIR in Beckley. So we've been all through southern West Virginia, Roanoke, which also had K92 and can also see J104. And basically that was basically it. I want to see Los Angeles, but don't have the money for that. So yeah.
Right. Well, the other thing, Darnell, is these things take, all these things take a while to, to build up over many years. That's one of the factors, is that it doesn't happen. Nothing happens overnight these days, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, really, all very interesting. So, what are some specific questions that you want to go over with me and ask me about, my opinions, my life, what I do, things like that?
Okay. Well, you've given a little bit of your opinion on the radio industry. So basically, what I want to know is radio today versus the 60s and the 70s. Do you think, can you compare radio of the 60s and 70s to today's life? And how do you feel about that?
Well, considering that I'm not old enough to have been around at that time, I cannot really make a comparison. But what was going on then is that there was in the 60s and 70s, they didn't have online radio. So everything was just based on terrestrial at that point.
Yep, and everything ran on cart machines. So
right,
yeah.
Right. And if you were working in a big station, like a famous high profile station, then you would make a lot of money. But if you weren't, then you would be on some local station and it wouldn't be, much money at all. So it just depends. Whereas now, with the way that you can monetize everything, there's no real limitation, except for technical things. But outside of it, there's no real limitation. The sky's the limit is what I think.
Yeah, now I've mentioned this on my podcast. The radio industry as a whole, radio is not dead. Many people think radio is dead. Everyone, like they just said, Spotify and Pandora killed radio. They didn't kill radio. They killed the record companies. That's who they really.
Yeah, seriously, because now anyone can start a podcast and come and speak on Spotify. Anyone can do it. There's no barrier. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is no, and sorry about the echoes, but
no problem.
But the way it went for me is that's how it always was, and they said, "Oh, Spotify killed the radio industry," but they didn't. They really didn't kill the radio industry. It wasn't all that different. We've heard these air checks of the 60s and 70s. Things were a lot different than they are today. So yeah.
Right. That's true. And the other thing too is now anyone can create a radio show.
Yes, and that's true. But I've often talked about this. One of our iHeart stations, in fact, it's our CHR, it has a weird way of programming everything. And every time I've listened to American Top 40 with Ryan Seacrest, I don't know what's going on. But every time we get ready to do songs 15 to 11 or 14 to 11, it's always from weeks ago, 15 through 11. I'm like, is something not loading properly? I don't know. I just our base seems to be out of Boston. We did an interview with a guy who works at a station in Canton, and he's my favorite DJ, by the way. And he basically was saying the way the record label put it, everything is based out of Boston. So yeah.
Right. That is very interesting, whereas before internet radio, to even create a show, you had to be a much more, you had to really know the right people. It was a much bigger deal back then. You had to, the way that have you studied how people created and actually applied to have a talk show on a radio station a long time ago before the internet? Do you know how they did it?
I'm not exactly sure, but I might have some ideas from just listening at how some of these talk shows on these terrestrial stations were actually ran, and seeing the production behind, or hearing the production behind them. I actually went to did I go to 96.5? No, I did not. I actually shadowed a couple DJs at a couple different stations. I think I had every chance to shadow my favorite DJ when he was working for iHeartRadio, but it just didn't come to fruition. But the two stations that I did shadow was our intercom station, now Odyssey, and it was known as Soft Rock 102.1, but now it's known as Star 102, and then 95.5 The Fish, which is our Christian station owned by Salem. I shadow a couple of their DJs, and 102.1 I actually shadowed Trapper Jack before he retired. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting to get into talk radio a long time ago. People who wanted to get into that, they would actually have to take a cassette tape, and they would actually have to record and act out their own show in their own house. And then they would actually send in those cassettes to stations. And what do you think? Do you want to have me on your station? Do you want to play that, something like that? So that's how they did it. And it was extremely competitive. And basically, if you knew the right people, you could get into the industry. But obviously, more people tried to get into the industry than got into the industry. It was very difficult for people. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
My whole niche is music shows. I was never a talk guy, and the reason why I was never really a talk guy, I do listen to some, but there's just too much political stuff for
Mm-hmm.
me in listening, and I'm like, I'm not going to listen to the political stuff because everything, there's always a lot of this is conservative talk radio, and I'm like, first of all, I'm on the other side, and I will not listen to you. But but it is fun to hear both sides. But when you see iHeart, like WTAM, on the conservative side of stuff, like Clay and Buck, we do have a guy that's on both sides on the local side. But I would never want to be a talk guy because I would feel like I'm being forced into conservative talking about political stuff. So that's why I said I would rather do, and if I was to get into the industry, I would rather do music, and that's how I will always be.
Good. That's fine. Music is your your niche. Well, that's good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, all very, very interesting. So yeah, what are some other questions, some other burning questions that you have, by the way?
Basically, well, that's about it. I mean, I probably would like to know your life story, but I can ask that in private. But yeah, that's basically it, at least on that end.
Right. Okay. Well, would you like to know how I got into the podcast space and kind of what my motivation was?
Yeah, I would actually like to know that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's why I asked. So basically, during the height of the pandemic, I was listening to a lot of podcasts around the blindness community. And I just noticed that they really were not, in my opinion, open to opinions. And I wanted to create an environment where blind people from all walks of life could come up here and share their story and have something to connect to. And that's what we do here at Aaron's Opinion. We've been recording for over 3 years now. And we just have a lot of episodes where we have different interviews and things like that. Basically long form content, long form interviews. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice.
And I've only found out about VisionCast with JC and friends very recently, a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yours I will listen to, but I have not yet listened to VisionCast. Okay. Yeah,
it's actually interesting that you're willing to listen to my content. Well, here's the thing. Here's the secret. I may be on the opposite side of the aisle from you. You mentioned how you don't like or you don't listen to politics stuff. Well, I may be on the opposite side of the aisle. Just to let you know, just to give you a disclaimer about my content.
Right.
The vast majority, and I will tell you that the vast majority of the episodes do not mention politics at all. Most do not. There are only about 2 or 3 that are politically inclined. And when I say they are politically inclined, they are far right, far right, with some very interesting people, but people that you may or may not want. Now, it would be a chance for you to learn from them, which may or may not be interesting. But I appreciate the fact that you say that we need to start learning from each other and doing spending more time listening. Definitely, yeah.
If I may suggest to you, even on the political side of the spectrum, grabbing some of our Ohio senators too, maybe a little bit, because there is actually some stuff that I'm seeing on the television spectrum of Ohio that has to do with abortion stuff now, and I'm that's just a suggestion, just making a suggestion here, publicly making a suggestion. So yeah.
And what suggestion are you making?
Okay, so basically, what I want to see, I would like to get interviews from both sides of the spectrum, at least from our side of Ohio, um, or in the state of Ohio, about the issue one, at least from the women's perspective. So I am going to come into this because I've seen it on television. That issue one is being talked about again in Ohio, but this is a different form of issue one, because now they're saying that it's the extreme abortion ban in Ohio is not what they want. So they want us to think about that for a bit. We're seeing a lot of yes sides. We're seeing we only saw but one no side on the ads. But yeah.
Thank you. We don't talk about that on my podcast much, but thank you for sharing. Okay, that is fine. And all good, all interesting, but we don't cover that here.
Okay.
For the most part, I don't get into that because I don't need to get into that on my podcast. But you're right. There probably are podcasts that do specialize in that and do cover that, but simply my podcast doesn't cover that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So what are some other questions that you might have?
That's for me. It for now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. If you Darnell could ask me now only one question, right? To make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to know?
Well, if I could ask you, as a podcaster, so you basically explained the mission of your podcast. So now that I know what the mission is, but do you what if there was somebody who is getting blind, or is about to be blind, or is just been blind? Because my sister had been blind actually, but now she's also deaf. But I wonder how someone like that would actually, because I was born blind, but someone who was actually able to see. I was
born blind too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but someone who actually could see and they're getting blind because of, like rare diseases and conditions, what would you suggest for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that, of course, they need to listen to podcasts where we give knowledge about what they need to be doing. I would suggest that they research the facts and learn about what steps they need to take, what training they need to take, what education they need, and things like that. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool, because now I can make mention of that, because I know the Sight Center has a program. Well, they did have one, and I don't remember the name of it offhand. But there are some people, like I said, the Sight Center has been making Cleveland Sight Center has been making some budget cuts lately, and it makes some clients not want to even come in for recreation, such as myself. Yeah, and I'm saying this. If we get a hold of organizations like Lighthouse or the Cleveland Sight Center or other organizations in and out of the U.S., that it would be a lot more feasible. And also, yes, listen to podcasts, but also try and contact these organizations to see what they can do for you as well.
Absolutely. Good advice. All right. If someone wants to get in touch with Darnell Johnson, how would they do that?
So my personal email, you can get in touch with me, is, as I don't have as a permanent phone number yet, but you can email me at Darnell, DARNELL, Devenir, DEV. My original spelling is DEAV, but it's DEVENIER DEVER@gmail.com. The DEV spelling is to make sure that screen readers pronounce it decently. So, yes.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Well, so good. And I'm just curious, do you know how I end a recording of my podcast?
No, I don't.
That is fine. Okay. So we say, thank you for listening. Have a good day, and help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. For those of you still watching on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Don't forget, click the link in the description, and we will be back soon. And don't forget to check out Radio Connection Live. All right, everyone. Take care. We'll be back soon. Darnell will be in touch soon with more information for you. And I hope to hear from you soon. All right.
Sorry.
No problem.
Big Ben ruins me every time. All right. Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Very good, Darnell. Keep in touch, and we hope to hear from you soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Always welcome here. Help one person.